I'd like to pull away from it and mention to you that over the weekend, I'm hoping to get 2 or 3 new videos out for the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel. And I really enjoyed reading that story last night. That was really good, by William Morrow. That was quite a story, very brutal, quite an interesting story. And we're gonna read it. We're gonna read one tonight perfect for the season, I think. So let's go over to a little former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel action and go with our friends from the Outer Limits and talk to them, you know where, my friends, in the Control Voice Zone, as we get a chance to enjoy a short story on this hot summer night, a short story by H.P. Lovecraft. And you let me know if you know, for this hot summer night, if you can guess, put it into the comments if you know what story I'm going to read.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Yeah, all right. Friday night, a hot summer night, was in the hundreds in many places here in North America, and it was quite a humdinger here in Moscow as well. I'm LG Grande, buenos whatever. Thanks for hanging out, everybody, and thanks for being interested in a little letting off of the steam, a little something where we can commiserate, have a great time together on a Friday night, on a great hot summer night, not a hot August night, but a hot July night. And as we go from July 3rd into July 4th, I want to wish everybody a happy Independence Day. Again, my dog's birthday, Snowball. Snowball was born July 3rd, 1967. And I grew up with that dog, and she was wonderful. I'll tell you a little bit about her, and I've got a poem to read to you about Snowball before we close things off. A little something extra to give you some extra value. If you like what we're doing at Former Star Trek Writing Fellow on the YouTube channel or on Rumble, then head on over and find us live Monday through Friday at Liberty Conspiracy. That's where we are right now, and so the Liberty Conspiracy audience is inside Rumble and over at X at Guard Goldsmith, where we stream. Please find us and go to my Substack, the Gardner Goldsmith Substack. You'll see the work, the thoughts of a libertarian anarchist, former guy who wrote for Star Trek Voyager in the script department and at the Outer Limits. It's a very small sort of guy in their script writing things, script writing ways, and also has some novellas that are published and some short stories, and I have novels that are going to be coming out. I actually, if you're not familiar, I declined a contract one time because the publishing company wanted me to separate and go under a pen name because they thought my libertarian stuff maybe was too radical. I don't know. So there you go. Let's talk tonight, everybody, about H.P. Lovecraft. There's our little chalkboard for the evening, and let's discuss. Not going to go into too much about H.P. Lovecraft. We'll do a little separate bio thing about H.P., but we're going to go to fantastic fiction, where we see H.P. Lovecraft was born in 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island, where he lived most of his life. He wrote many essays and poems early in his career, but gradually focused on the writing of horror stories after the advent in 1923 of the pulp magazine Weird Tales, to which he contributed most of his fiction. His relatively small corpus of fiction, 3 short novels and about 60 short stories, has nevertheless exercised a wide influence on subsequent work in the field, and he's regarded as the leading 20th century author of supernatural fiction. H.P. Lovecraft died in Providence in 1937. So he was only 89 years old. I think I've got that right. That's my government numbers. Now, Providence, very well known as H.P. Lovecraft's home. His gravesite gets visited a great deal, and I've been to his gravesite with Heather Graham and a few other folks, and people often leave little gifts and stuff like that. He is seen as one of the progenitors of weird fiction, sort of following the footsteps of a few other authors who were before him, William Hope Hodgson and a few others, and his work is known as cosmic horror in some cases, and in some cases he did some supernatural fiction. If you read The Tomb, things like that, more traditional sort of supernatural stories. But tonight, since it's so hot, I'm going to check, as Buster Poindexter would say, it's hot, hot, hot. Can anybody guess the story we're going to be reading tonight by H.P. Lovecraft? I'm going over into the Rumble chat. We're going to show this on the screen real quick and see if anybody's got any guesses. I don't see any right now. Okay. I see Edie Amin. Talk about horror. Okay. MOE, thanks for being there. Mary Ploppins, thanks for being there. I'm going to show you, this is one of a multi-volume set that my brother gave to me of H.P. Lovecraft's stuff. And it's a wonderful little small sort of thing, set of books, hardcovers. This is Stories of the Dreamlands by H.P. Lovecraft. Now, this publishing company put out this whole set. I think, is this Titan? Sirius Books, based out of London. Sirius, like the Sirius star system. And I want to show you, very similar to what Borderlands Books puts out, their little book series. And, I've been able to edit two of these, one for Robert E. Howard and the other for E.F. Benson. And don't forget, Robert Hugh Benson, his brother, has an amazing dystopian novel that we'll have to talk about that some other time. But I want to read to you a story perfect for summertime. And those of you who are fans of Lovecraft probably know, if you're watching after the fact and you're saying, oh, I didn't get to guess, you can put it in the comments on YouTube or whatever afterwards. It's called Cool Air. Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft. I think you'll dig this one. And here it comes on page 112, Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft. Hopefully you'll like this one, and you'll find it good. Oh, and I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go with the changeover to make myself smaller so there's no skipping and so on, and hopefully that the audio won't skip. You ask me to explain why I am afraid of a draft of cool air, why I shiver more than others upon entering a cold room, and seem nauseated and repelled when the chill of evening creeps through the heat of a mild autumn day. There are those who say I respond to cold as others do to a bad odor, and I am the last to deny the impression. What I will do is to relate the most horrible circumstance I ever encountered, and leave it to you to judge whether or not this forms a suitable explanation of my peculiarity. It is a mistake to fancy that horror is associated inextricably with darkness, silence, and solitude. I found it in the glare of mid-afternoon, in the clangor of a metropolis, and in the teeming midst of a shabby and commonplace rooming house with a prosaic landlady and two stalwart men by my side. In the spring of 1923, I had secured some dreary and unprofitable magazine work in the city of New York, and being unable to pay any substantial rent, began drifting from one cheap boarding establishment to another in search of a room which might combine the qualities of decent cleanliness and durable furnishings and very reasonable price. It soon developed that I had only a choice between different evils, but after a time, I came upon a house in West 14th Street, which disgusted me much less than the others I had sampled. The place was a 4-story mansion of brownstone, dating apparently from the late 40s, and fitted with woodwork and marble whose stained and sullied splendor argued a descent from high levels of tasteful opulence. In the rooms, large and lofty, and decorated with impossible paper and ridiculously ornate stucco cornices, there lingered a depressing mustiness and hint of obscure cookery. But the floors were clean and linen tolerably regular, and the hot water not too often cold or turned off, so that I came to regard it as at least a bearable place to hibernate till one might really live again. The landlady, a slatternly, almost bearded Spanish woman named Herrero, did not annoy me with gossip or with criticisms of the late burning electric light in my third-floor front hall room, and my fellow lodgers were as quiet and uncommunicative as one might desire, being mostly Spaniards, a little above the coarsest and crudest grade. Only the din of streetcars in the thoroughfare below proved a serious annoyance. I had been there about 3 weeks when the first odd incident occurred. One evening, at about 8, I heard a spattering on the floor and became suddenly aware that I had been smelling the pungent odor of ammonia for some time. Looking about, I saw that the ceiling was wet and dripping, the soaking apparently proceeding from a corner on the side toward the street. Anxious to stop the matter at its source, I hastened to the basement to tell the landlady, and was assured by her that the trouble would quickly be set right. "Dr. Munoz," she cried as she rushed upstairs ahead of me, "he have spilled his chemicals. He is too sick to doctor himself, sicker and sicker all the time, but he will not have no other for help. He is very queer in his sickness. All day he take funny smelling baths, and he cannot get excited or warm. All his own housework he do. His little room are full of bottles and machines, and he do not work as doctor. But he was great once. My father in Barcelona have hear of him, and only just now he fix a arm of the plumber that get hurt of a sudden. He never go out, only on roof, and my boy Esteban, he bring him his food and laundry and medicines and chemicals. My God, this sell ammonia the man used for keeping him cool." Mrs. Herrero disappeared up the staircase to the 4th floor, and I returned to my room. The ammonia ceased to drip, and as I cleaned up what had spilled, and as I opened the window for air, I heard the landlady's heavy footsteps above me. Dr. Munoz I had never heard, save for certain sounds as of some gasoline-driven mechanism, since his step was soft and gentle. I wondered for a moment what the strange affliction of this man might be, and whether his obstinate refusal of outside air were not the result of a rather baseless eccentricity. There is, I reflected tritely, an infinite deal of pathos in the state of an eminent person who has come down in the world. I might never have known Dr. Munoz had it not been for the heart attack that suddenly seized me one forenoon as I sat writing in my room. Physicians had told me of the danger of those spells, and I knew there was no time to be lost. So, remembering what the landlady had said about the invalid's help of the injured workmen, I dragged myself upstairs and knocked feebly at the door above mine. My knock was answered in good English by a curious voice some distance to the right, asking my name and business, and these things being stated, there came an opening of the door next to the one I had sought. A rush of cool air greeted me. And though the day was one of the hottest of late June, I shivered as I crossed the threshold into a large apartment whose rich and tasteful decoration surprised me in this nest of squalor and seediness. A folding couch now filled its diurnal role of sofa, and the mahogany furniture, sumptuous hangings, old paintings, and mellow bookshelves all bespoke a gentleman's study rather than a boarding house bedroom. I now saw that the hall room above mine, the little room of bottles and machines which Mrs. Herrero had mentioned, was merely the laboratory of the doctor, and that his main living quarters lay in the spacious adjoining room, whose convenient alcoves and large contiguous bathroom permitted him to hide all dressers and obtrusive utilitarian devices. Dr. Munoz most certainly was a man of birth, cultivation, and discrimination. The figure before me was short, but exquisitely proportioned, and clad in somewhat formal dress of perfect cut and fit. A high-bred face of masterful, though not arrogant expression, was adorned by a short, iron-gray, full beard, and an old-fashioned pince-nez shielded the full, dark eyes and surrounded an aquiline nose, which gave a Moorish touch to a physiognomy otherwise dominantly Celtiberian. Thick, well-trimmed hair that argued the punctual calls of a barber was parted gracefully above a high forehead, and the whole picture was one of striking intelligence and superior blood and breeding. Nevertheless, as I saw Dr. Munoz in that blast of cool air, I felt a repugnance which nothing in his aspect could justify. Only his lividly inclined complexion and coldness of touch could have afforded a physical basis for this feeling, and even these things should have been excusable considering the man's known invalidism. It might, too, have been the singular cold that alienated me, for such chilliness was abnormal on so hot a day, and the abnormal always excites aversion, distrust, and fear. But repugnance was soon forgotten in admiration, for the strange physician's extreme skill at once became manifest despite the ice-coldness and shakiness of his bloodless-looking hands. He clearly understood my needs at a glance and ministered to them with a master's deftness, the while reassuring me in a finely modulated, though oddly hollow and timbreless voice, that he was the bitterest of sworn enemies to death, and had sunk his fortune and lost all his friends in a lifetime of bizarre experiment devoted to its bafflement and extirpation. Something of the benevolent fanatic seemed to reside in him, and he rambled on almost garrulously as he sounded my chest and mixed a suitable draught of drugs fetched from the smaller laboratory room. Evidently, he found the society of a well-born man a rare novelty in this dingy environment, and was moved to unaccustomed speech as memories of better days surged over him. His voice, if queer, was at least soothing, and I could not even perceive that he breathed as the fluent sentences rolled urbanely out. He sought to distract my mind from my own seizure by speaking of his theories and experiments, and I remember his tactfully consoling me about my weak heart by insisting that will and consciousness are stronger than organic life itself, so that if a bodily frame be but originally healthy and carefully preserved, it may, through a scientific enhancement of these qualities, retain a kind of nervous animation, despite the most serious impairments, defects, or even absences in the battery of specific organs. He might, he half jestingly said, someday teach me to live, or at least to possess some kind of conscious existence without any heart at all. For his part, he was afflicted with a complication of maladies requiring a very exact regimen, which included constant cold. Any marked rise in temperature might, if prolonged, affect him fatally, and the frigidity of his habitation, some 55 or 56 degrees Fahrenheit, was maintained by an absorption system of ammonia cooling, the gasoline engine of whose pumps I had often heard in my own room below. Relieved of my seizure, in a marvelously short while, I left the shivery place, a disciple and a devotee of this gifted recluse. After that, I paid him frequent overcoated calls, listening while he told of secret researches and almost ghastly results, and trembling a bit when I examined the unconventional and astonishingly ancient volumes in his shelves. I was eventually, I may add, almost cured of my disease for all time by his skillful ministrations. It seems that he did not scorn the incantations of the medievalists, since he believed these cryptic formulae to contain rare psychological stimuli which might conceivably have singular effects on the substance of a nervous system from which organic pulsations had fled. I was touched by his account of the aged Dr. Torres of Valencia, who had shared his earlier experiments with him through the great illness of 18 years before, whence his present disorders had proceeded. No sooner had the venerable practitioner saved his colleague than he himself succumbed to the grim enemy he had fought. Perhaps the strain had been too great, for Dr. Munoz made it whisperingly clear, though not in detail, that the methods of healing had been most extraordinary, involving scenes and processes not welcomed by elderly and conservative Galens. As the weeks passed, I observed with regret that my new friend was indeed slowly but unmistakably losing ground physically. As Mrs. Herrero had suggested, it was true. The livid aspect of his countenance was intensified. His voice became, however, more hollow and indistinct. His muscular motions were less perfectly coordinated, and his mind and will displayed less resilience and initiative. Of this sad change, he seemed by no means unaware, and little by little his expression and conversation both took on a gruesome irony which restored in me something of the subtle repulsion I had originally felt. He developed strange caprices, acquiring a fondness for exotic spices and Egyptian incense till his room smelled like the vault of a sepulchred pharaoh in the Valley of Kings. At the same time, his demands for cold air increased, and with my aid, he amplified the ammonia piping in his room and modified the pumps and feed of his refrigerating machine till he could keep the temperature as low as 34 or 40 degrees, and finally even 28, The bathroom and laboratory, of course, being less chilled in order that water might not freeze and that chemical processes might not be impeded. The tenant adjoining him complained of the icy air from around the connecting door, so I helped him fit heavy hangings to obviate the difficulty. A kind of growing horror of outre and morbid cast seemed to possess the doctor. He talked of death incessantly, but laughed hollowly when such things as burial or funeral arrangements were gently suggested. All in all, he became a disconcerting and even gruesome companion. Yet in my gratitude for his healing, I could not well abandon him to the strangers around him, and was careful to dust his room and attend to his needs each day, muffled in a heavy ulster, which I brought especially for the purpose. I likewise did much of his shopping and gasped in bafflement at some of the chemicals he ordered from druggists and laboratory supply houses. An increasing and unexplained atmosphere of panic seemed to rise around his apartment. The whole house, as I have said, had a musty odor, but the smell in his room was worse, and in spite of all the spices and incense and the pungent chemicals of the new, now incessant baths, which he insisted on taking unaided, I perceived that it must be connected with his ailment, and shuddered when I reflected on what that ailment might be. Mrs. Herrero crossed herself when she looked at him and gave him unreservedly to me, not even letting her son, Esteban, continue to run errands for him. When I suggested to other physicians, the sufferer would fly into as much of a rage as he seemed to dare to entertain. He evidently feared the physical effect of violent emotion, yet his will and driving force waxed rather than waned, and he refused to be confined to his bed. The lassitude of his earlier ill days gave place to a return of his fiery purpose, so that he seemed about to hurl defiance at the death demon, even as that ancient enemy seized up on him. The pretense of eating, always curiously like a formality with him, he virtually abandoned, and mental power alone appeared to keep him from total collapse. He acquired a habit of writing long documents of some sort, which he carefully sealed and filled with injunctions that I transmit them after his death to certain persons whom he named, for the most part, lettered East Indian doctors and scientists, but including a once celebrated French physician, now generally thought dead, and about whom the most inconceivable things had been whispered. As it happened, I burned all these papers undelivered and unopened. His aspect and voice became utterly frightful, and his presence almost unbearable. One September day, an unexpected glimpse of him induced an epileptic fit in a man who had come to repair his electric desk lamp, a fit for which he prescribed effectively whilst keeping himself well out of sight. That man, oddly enough, had been through the terrors of the Great War without having incurred any fright so thorough. Then, in the middle of October, the horror of horrors came with stupefying suddenness. One night, about 11, the pump of the refrigerating machine broke down, so that within 3 hours the process of ammonia cooling became impossible. Dr. Munoz summoned me by thumping on the floor, and I worked desperately to repair the injury, whilst my host cursed in a tone whose lifeless, rattling hollowness surpassed description. My amateur efforts, however, proved of no use, and when I had brought in a mechanic from a neighboring all-night garage, we learned that nothing could be done till morning, when a new piston would have to be obtained. The moribund hermit's rage and fear, swelling to grotesque proportions, seemed likely to shatter what remained of his failing physique, and once a spasm caused him to clap his hands to his eyes and rush into the bathroom. He groped his way out with face tightly bandaged, and I never saw his eyes again. The frigidity of the apartment was now sensibly diminishing, and at about 5 a.m. the doctor retired to the bathroom, commanding me to keep him supplied with all the ice I could obtain at all-night drugstores and cafeterias. As I would return from my sometimes discouraging trips and lay my spoils before the closed bathroom door, I could hear a restless splashing within and a thick voice croaking out the order of "More! More!" At length, a warm day broke, and the shops opened one by one. I asked Esteban either to help with the ice fetching whilst I obtained the pump piston, or to order the piston while I continued with the ice. But, instructed by his mother, he absolutely refused. Finally, I hired a seedy-looking loafer whom I encountered on the corner of 8th Avenue to keep the patient supplied with ice from a little shop where I introduced him, and I applied myself diligently to the task of finding a pump piston and engaging workmen competent to install it. The task seemed interminable, and I raged almost as violently as the hermit when I saw the hours slipping by in a breathless, foodless round of vain telephoning and a hectic quest from place to place, hither and thither by subway and surface car. About noon, I encountered a suitable supply house far downtown, and at approximately 1:30 p.m., arriving at my boarding place with the necessary paraphernalia and 2 sturdy and intelligent mechanics, I had done it, all I could, and I hoped I was in time. Black terror, however, had preceded me. The house was in utter turmoil, and above the chatter of odd voices I heard a man praying in a deep basso. Fiendish things were in the air, and lodgers tolled over the beads of their rosaries as they caught the odor from beneath the doctor's closed door. They told of things, well, the lounger I had hired, it seems, had fled screaming and mad-eyed not long after his second delivery of ice, perhaps as a result of excessive curiosity. He could not, of course, have locked the door behind him, yet it was now fastened, presumably from the inside. There was no sound within save a nameless sort of slow, thick dripping. Briefly consulting with Mrs. Herrero and the workmen, despite a fear that gnawed my inmost soul, I advised the breaking down of the door, but the landlady found a way to turn the key from the outside with some wire device. We had previously opened the doors of all the other rooms in that hall and flung all the windows to the very top. Now, noses protected by handkerchiefs, we tremblingly invaded the accursed south room, which blazed with the warm sun of early afternoon. A kind of dark, slimy trail led from the open bathroom door to the hall door, and thence to the desk, where a terrible little pool had accumulated. Something was scrawled there in pencil, in an awful, blind hand, on a piece of paper hideously smeared, as though by the very claws that traced the hurried last words. Then the trail led to the couch and ended unutterably. What was or had been on the couch, I cannot and dare not say here. But this is what I shiveringly puzzled out on the stickily smeared paper before I drew a match and burned it to a crisp. What I puzzled out in terror as the landlady and two mechanics rushed frantically from that hellish place to babble their incoherent stories at the nearest police station. The nauseous words seemed well nigh incredible in that yellow sunlight, with the clatter of cars and motor trucks ascending clamorously from crowded 14th Street. Yet I confess that I believed them then. Whether I believe them now, I honestly do not know. There are things about which it is better not to speculate. And after all that I can say is that I hate the smell of ammonia and grow faint at a draft of unusually cool air. The end, ran that noisome scrawl, is here. No more ice. The man looked and ran away. Warmer every minute, and the tissues can't last. I fancy you know what I said about the will and the nerves and the preserved body after the organs ceased to work. It was good theory, but couldn't keep up indefinitely. There was a gradual deterioration I had not foreseen. Dr. Torres knew, but the shock killed him. He couldn't stand what he had to do. He had to get me in a strange, dark place. When he minded my letter and nursed me back, and the organs would never work again. It had to be done my way. Instead, artificial preservation. For you see, I died that time 18 years ago. And that is the end of Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Not Hewlett-Packard. Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Good stuff. Let me know what you thought of that, everybody. I'd love to get your opinions. Let me know if you've ever heard Cool Air before on a hot summer night. I think hopefully you like that. Birdhouse. Dude, that was intense, guard. Haha, no way. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I like the sort of, there's a bit of a shift there because the French doctor took his organs to keep going, but that didn't work. And now this guy had his theory, and I had to reread that. I'll edit that for the final version so that it all fits together. And it'll be smooth, which actually it's interesting. Some of you might have already noticed that when I'm in the small window, sometimes if I have to edit something because there's a little blip or something, I've actually reread one segment of one story and put it in as a dub. And because there's only a small window of me on there, it's almost unnoticeable, which is kind of cool. So that's also helpful. So there's no jump cut. But anyway, if you're listening to this in the audio podcast of the Liberty Conspiracy podcast later, I will redo this and it will be out as its own thing on YouTube on the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel. That was the first time for me, says Birdhouse. Yeah, that is one of his more famous stories, Cool Air. And again, sort of comes at the time, refrigeration just starting. Again, my dad grew up in an era when the Iceman would come. So all that stuff was sort of new. It was new technology and stuff. So, we come from an environment where we take a lot of things for granted, obviously. So that sort of thing maybe didn't have the same sort of mysterious allure as it might have had when H.P. Lovecraft was writing about the science and the technology and the vacuum pumps and all that sort of stuff, right? The ammonia and things. So very interesting. Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I've written more on Transmitter, but I won't read that to you now. And I won't read the Ursula Le Guin stuff. I'll do that as a sample on Wordsmith Wednesday next week. But in the meantime, I do want to leave you one thing. This is for my dog's birthday, the Snowball poem that I wrote. And I think you might enjoy it. See if I can go over here to my recent documents, go into the poetry, and you can tell me what you think. So let me go to Poetry Easy Access. Over here, Poetry 22. And there it is, Snowball. All right. So this is my poem about my dog, Snowball. So here you go. Snowball. Wrote it last year. And I'll just do it this way. It's fairly short. Hopefully there won't be a jump. She was strong and fast and soft and white. And sometimes, times far too late into the night, she'd howl and howl and howl some more, just outside our dark back door, to make the birds take to their flight. When I was young, she'd walk with me and stand below while I climbed a tree and try to keep me company, even when she wasn't supposed to tag along. She'd sing a song of huff and puff, running through fields and bluff, and never could get enough of being a friend to me. And when I told her, rare at times, that she could not join me on a climb or travel far from home, when I would roam those times alone, she would whimper and she might cry. And I thought that she might wonder why we had to say goodbye. But I'd return only to learn more lessons of devotion from those great and loving eyes. When I broke my arm, she must have sensed the harm and stayed right by my side. That one snowy slide, how love abides. Across stone walls and falls, she saw me home. She must have known her pal was in distress, because she did her best then and again. And again, my old Snowy, my old best friend. And years have passed. I see at last that though I'm not yet married, perhaps I tarried too long or sang one too many songs to get along and take a wife. Still, in my life, in good times, despite the strife, I know I had a loving mom, a loving dad, loving family, and a friend whose devotion lingers, whose white fur still plays upon my fingers, who ran with me and slept beside me when I wept, whose kinship never ends, my white and snowy pal, Snowball, my ever-present friend. Happy birthday, Snowball. Great. Dogs or something, cats or something, animals, so many great things they do. Wonderful, huh? So I hope that was nice. And if you got a good animal or something story, let's start sharing those on the show. Remember, it's always open to interesting things in your area, history, family stories, old favorite meal, some special occasion that you remember, a special visitor, anything like that, place you used to love. Like we were talking with Jason Barker about he'd be climbing the tree, sitting on the tree limb, and his grandma would call them to eat. He'd go inside. Birdhouse says dogs are the best. Snowball, yeah. He says, well done. Your writing is so imaginative, yet so real. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really cool. And I won't go into it. I'm just, I always assess how I'm feeling so that maybe I can get back to full-time work and stuff like that. And it's good that I can do the show and sort of stay close to home. If my body is not acting too well, I can usually pull out, get the show done, and slowly, get everything prepared and pretty locked down. Be my own boss, and you're sort of my bosses here. Handy says, my cat left me a small bunny at my bedroom door while I was sleeping today. She's a good provider. Was it alive, Handy? I hope it was alive. I wonder. How big is that cat? And of course, how big was the bunny? Or as Monty Python would say, sharp, vicious fangs. Holy Grail, right? Cat has to be a strong one to fight that thing. Oh, man. Isn't it great? Glad you made it to Hoosier Land, Smuhosky. Hey, guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Remember, if you're watching the show afterwards, a great group of people inside Rumble. I don't say it with any sort of lightness or anything. A really, really serious time to be, meeting people, kindred spirits, soulful connections here. And I don't mean this in a superficial way. It's really great. And a lot of it stems from the David Knight Show, Tony Arterburn, Jason, Karen, Tiger, Don Jeffries, Billy Ray. Handy's, been such a participant in so many of the things for those guys. Some of you who have come in and helped out, it's been great. Tom Monteleone coming in once in a while for this show. Obviously Eric Peters and Jacob Hornberger. Now Angela Keaton from Anti-War coming in last week. That was great. Birdhouse says, I really enjoy Fiction Friday. Thanks, brother. Thank you so much, man. Yeah, I'll read some more of Transmitter later. Hopefully we'll get some time to do it on Monday. And Adolescent Bunny, 15-year-old cat. It was meant for my meal, I guess. Well, as long as it's not like that movie Repulsion with Catherine Deneuve, just don't see any hands coming out of the walls, okay? You don't want that. And that she did a great job in that movie. That was pretty good. And then later, she wasn't in a lot of movies at all, Catherine Deneuve. She didn't do a lot of movies. She was mostly model, but she was a good actress. And later, when she was in The Hunger with David Bowie, man, I haven't seen the whole movie. Maybe it's awful, but the scenes I've seen of her and her acting in that, it was just remarkable. And if you have seen Repulsion, that is a freaky movie. Was that Roman Polanski did that? He was weird, I think. Yeah, I don't know. My favorite show of the week. Thanks, Smoo. Yeah, I'm going to try to do more. And again, if I can get the funding, I'd like to do like the midday thing of go back to do the reading room where nonfiction books, I'll read segments of nonfiction books for like 5 days straight so that you can get the segments. You can listen to them when you want. You can listen to them live or you can listen to them later. And you get a sample of some really good nonfiction book by, whoever it might be, Murray Rothbard or Henry Hazlitt, Frederick Bastier's stuff, that sort of thing. Some of the stuff about the contemporary issues like the stuff about the Russian scapegoating Russia by, what's his name, Dan Kovalek, that sort of stuff, to give you some samples of things you might like. It'll be close to being able to do documentaries on these things. Probably the most efficient way for me to get the information out to you, and then you can take it and do with it what you want if you think it's worthwhile. So, all right, thanks everybody. And Smooth says this administration's behavior is sickening. Yeah. But listen, I do want to mention again, I've got some amazing memories and thinking about Snowball. We were with the dog one night on a July 3rd going into the 4th, I think. And they used to have fireworks in a town called Temple. Just to give you an idea of how starkly things can remain in your mind. And we were on a sort of a road that went between two sides. They had built it on a berm between two sides that was marshland. and we were sort of facing southeast, and the fireworks were going off not too distant, but a little distant ways. And when they would do those fireworks that was sort of rain down with the shimmering like rain, I think that's, like sodium. I don't think it's phosphorus. I think it's sodium, the sort of pinkish stuff. Well, there were fireflies that were all very, very close to the surface of this swamp where the fens were sticking up. And it was dark, but you could see, and we were all parked. The cars were all parked along this berm, right? So imagine you're at one side and the other side's this way and the fireworks are over here. So all off in this distance, you could see when the fireworks would go off, the light would shine down on the swamp and the marsh, and you could see where the marshy stuff was. And then as they would die off, the fireflies, it was the most astounding thing. I'd never seen anything like it. They all would respond in unison, like suddenly start firing off their glow in response to these things. And it would happen. And then a millisecond later, like an echo, would be this. It was so cool. It was amazingly cool. And I remember our dog was with us, and we were far enough away that she wasn't afraid or anything. It started to rain. We kept her in the car, but it started to rain, and we all went rushing back to the car, and the dog was in the car. My sister, I think my brother and my father and I, and my mom was still back home. And we went running to the car, soaking wet. After the whole thing, it was just an incredible downpour. And you could see as the lights of the cars were starting up, the raindrops, like curtains of rain and it was just, those memories. They're just amazing memories, aren't they? Just incredible. Just awesome. And that was a great memory. I wrote a short story about that, actually. And it's called The Wait. Yeah, I have to rewrite it. I got to find that. So maybe it might be included in that collection that Tom Monteleone's going to put out from Borderlands of my stuff, which would be really cool. Handy says, my best buddy Tyson, a boxer, died with cancer at 6 years old. I kept him up to date on vaccines. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't. Yeah, that's a really good point, Handy. Yeah, really not a good idea now that I've heard, and I'm not like saying like, oh, I know, but you're recommending that, calling attention to that is something that I've never really mentioned, but it has popped in my mind when I've seen people talking about their animals getting vaccinated like that. Yeah, I think it does. I think it inspires cancers in a lot of animals. Wow. All right, listen, I better go. Thanks, everybody. Remember, if you want to support the show, the intellectual busking, you can always support us via Rumble while we're on. And Rockfin, you can't do it on Rockfin anymore. Never got that $1,000 that the Rockfin people had donated. Never came. The Rockfin people, never heard from them at all. Nothing. So that was just, I think the Rockfin people got it. So yeah, unfortunately, really, really frustrating. But I want to thank people. We've already gotten some contributions. Let me see tonight. Last night and tonight. Last night and the night before, people contributed over on Rumble. And if you are a paid subscriber or you're thinking about becoming a paid subscriber for the new things that are going to be coming over at the Substack, thanks. That's awesome. We'll give you short stories. We'll give you the news notes and all that stuff. Thanks, everybody. He was the best. I'm like Mr. Bojangles over here, still grieving him years later. We were talking in David Knight's chat earlier, and because I mentioned inside David Knight's chat earlier today, Handy, we were talking about, animals and whether we see them in heaven, in the afterlife. Because I thought about that when I woke up this morning. And let me tell you one thing before I go. So I had a dream one time, and this is kind of a strange thing. I had a dream one time that I was over at my friend the Leach's house, and they had these fields. They had sort of two fields that were connected, and they'd ride mini bikes and stuff on them. It was great. We had a blast. And so I'd walk through the woods, and Mr. Driscoll had cut that path with the lawnmower, and I'd walk down the Driscoll's driveway, and sometimes Snowball would try to keep me company, and I would always have to bring her back and bring her inside. And she was always frustrated she couldn't join me to go up to the Leach's house, because the Leach's lived right near a pretty busy road at that time, so we couldn't have Snowball go up there. But I would go up there, and I had a dream one time that I was at the Leach's, and they had a couple of rocks that were sort of like in the middle of the field, sort of large enough that you could, if you were a little kid, you could climb up them a little bit, not huge. But I had a dream that I was in the field, and I was coming from the stone wall that was at their northwestern border that would lead towards, you'd walk southeast to get to the house. And from my direction in the northwest, continuing through into their field. And I was getting chased by wolves. And I was running in my dream, running. And I could feel the presence of it coming closer and closer, this wolf coming closer and closer. And the wolf was chasing me, and it got me in the back. I tried. I was scrambling to get up the rock, because I knew if I could get up the rock, I could get on top of the rock and fend off the wolf. And I was trying to make it, and I couldn't make it. And it got me. I was like, oh! And I woke up. I'm in my bed. I woke up. It was morning, and it was just light. And my hand was outside the bed, and Snowball was there, licking my hand. And it was wild. It was like, obviously I must have sensed the animal or something, but something translated to Snowball. And I felt, when I woke up, I felt Snowball had protected me and saved me, pulled me out of the dream from the wolf, like saved my life from the dream. Snowball was there saving me. And then years later, when I was, going across the stone wall, and I had broken my arm trying to get through the woods, and I had to stop because I thought I was going to vomit. The pain was overwhelming. Snowball was with me the whole time. And when I had to sit on the stone wall, Snowball sat down next to me because she could tell I was in distress. Handy says, I think so. Revelation 5 says all the creatures on earth and in heaven will be praising God. Wouldn't it be great if we'll all be able to really communicate with our best pals when that day comes? Oh, that'd be awesome. That's cool. Let's show the screen again. That's great. Thanks, guys. Hey, look, have a great night. She sensed your distress. You got it. I believe dogs have an eternal spirit, no doubt, if you've been a pet owner. Yeah. All right. Well, there are a lot of questions that arise then. How small? What creatures? Insects too? How does it work? I don't know. I hope pets can see spirits. It's very interesting. Animals are something. They are something else. Have a great night, everybody. I'm going to leave you. By the way, don't forget, Shriekback made their crowdfunder. I mean, they raised like 34,000 pounds. It was some ridiculous. It was great. It's like, man, this is going to be a great album. Album 19. And I'm going to leave you with just something simple, the Outer Limits outro. And then I'm going to go get some dinner. And happy Independence Day. Thanks for being there, everybody. Please spread the word. Share the links about the shows. Remember, we're in that battle about the thumbs up, thumbs down. And tell everybody about freedom. Tell them about voluntarism and the deep principles of the Golden Rule, and about the good people in this chat. You guys rock. Have a great night, everybody. God bless.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.